Good afternoon. It's Saturday. It's the weekend. And I am doing a short vlog from my boudoir, not my basement today. Today I'm taking it kind of easy because I want to do some recording for the clips that I want to use for the Sex in the City. Yes, it's still happening. I just had to get over my anger with HBO Max that, you know, put a claim on my last video for no reason. So I need to figure out how I can avoid that. So all my hard work that I put into it for you guys does not get, demonetized again and clipped by them. So it's taken me about over a month to really strategize what I want to do and how I want to do it. But I want to record the clips tonight. So today I'm just sitting here watching Smallville. For all those who may or may not know, like I said, I am a huge DC fan. Superman was one of my first loves. You can have many. Christopher Reeves, of course. You just the whole, Super Friends, Superman, the whole thing about him, I've always appreciated about him. And he's always endeared me in many of the iterations that I've watched. And I know that Smallville is coming up on their 25th anniversary, which was a TV show on WB. In 2001, it started in October, which was a month after 9/11. So I remember it distinctly. And I didn't finish watching the entire 10-year run. I did watch the last episode because I knew what was supposed to come. I think I dropped off somewhere right before Lex Luthor, who was played by Michael Rosenbaum, left the show, which was, I believe, season 7. I did watch a couple of full episodes, like episodic series runs between 1 and I want to say 4. So I find it fascinating how, they took a storyline from the Superman 3 movie with Christopher Reeves, where he goes off to Smallville and he does meet up with his first love, Lana Lang, who's played by Annette O'Toole, who's ironically in the Smallville show as now, Superman's mother. And they stretched this thing for 10 years. Like seriously, 10 years, real episodes, not 10 episodes, like 22, 24 episodes per season. I have forgotten how much was introduced to this show. As far as villains, people he met, guest stars, it is fascinating. And I literally spent I'm going to say, it's been a month that I've been watching this. Can't go through all of the actual episodes. I have it on now. That's why you see me distracted, because I'm trying to pick out from each season which was my favorite episode, which is not an easy task. They're long, and I appreciate how detailed they got into the lore of Superman, but there's a lot of pros and cons to this. And Tom Welling, who plays Superman, to me, when I look at it now retrospectively, is the Superman Clark Kent, or I should say Clark Kent, before he became Superman personified. I think that he did a really good job. Extremely handsome. I always thought he was phenomenally gorgeous. He had the Superman look down pat. And now that we've been introduced to David Cornsweet from James Gunn's Superman, I can see him being the Superman adaptation after Tom Welling goes to Metropolis, right? So there's the period of Smallville where you see Superman going through his whole arc of being in Smallville before he gets to Metropolis. I can see David Cornsweet playing right after he gets there. But to me, Henry Cavill is the real Superman when he becomes the Superman that we know and love, that I know and love. He has that maturity, that strength, that there's just something about him. Like I can respectively look at each one of these guys and say, okay, I can pivot each one of these, excluding Christopher Reeves, which is a completely different story. And I'm going to tell you something. I think the WB network and as a whole really, really messed up by not capitalizing on the IP that they have with DC. Sorry, they did. They had this IP for so many years. They've done nothing with it. They wouldn't allow Batman to be portrayed in the Smallville, so they gave us Jason Hartley as the Green Arrow, which is AKA Batman. Because when you look at it, it's Batman. I think that he did a phenomenal role. I've forgotten how much I enjoyed him as Green Arrow. And I also like Stephen Amell in the Green Arrow TV show too, but he plays it completely different. In this show, this was prequel. This was prequel all of the WB shows that they had on, which was, The Flash, um, Arrow, what is it? Something Tomorrow. I forgot their fucking the group's name. And I watched them all, most of them. I mostly watched the Arrow. I finished it, and I didn't finish Flash. Never been a Flash fan. But I had forgotten how much I enjoyed really thinking about the lore of Superman. Now, this show touches upon so many things that are completely out of place. So I can't take this as a actual stepping stone to where he would be Superman, because in the Smallville TV show, he literally meets every single villain before he becomes Superman. All of them, all at once, every episode, every season. We got Darkseid. We got Brainiac. These are the ones that are coming to my head right now because those are the ones I remember the most. We got, it was just overwhelming. And I just finished season 10. I'm rewatching it from the beginning so I can pick which episode I want, but I just finished season 10. And I for sure did not see season 10 because I didn't know that Booster Gold was here in this season. I didn't know the Blue Beetle was in this season either. I'm like, yo, I missed a lot. And it was refreshing to see all these iterations, though short as they may be. But, because I'm such a fan, I knew it was absolutely, utterly ridiculous that, Tom Welling never put on the suit. Okay. Technically. He never flew. Technically. And I've been listening to the podcast that he has with Michael Rosenbaum, who plays Lex Luthor. Now, to me, Michael Rosenbaum is the best live action Lex Luthor. Okay. I didn't really like Kevin Spacey in the Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. But, the problem I have with Michael Rosenbaum is that he played one of the best Lex Luthor, but he was a young Lex Luthor. I like my Lex Luthor to be brooding, like big and broad-shouldered, like it is in the animated. But he played a hell of a role. And I realized when he made his, he left in season 7 and he came back for the last episode in season 10. When I heard his voice, I was like, and I saw his face, I was like, yeah. This is what has been missing. Though they try to do a really good job introducing a bunch of other characters to fight with Superman, there was just something completely missing without Lex Luthor, especially with the amount of chemistry that between him, Tom Welling, and Kristen Stewart, who plays Lana Lang. It was an intense show. I was like, wow. And I know I'm probably going to get beat up a lot. I have never really liked the character, not the actresses, the character of Lois Lane. I know that it's supposed to be the lore and all that. And it's like, yeah, okay. And when Erica Durance came in as Lois Lane in season 4, I believe, I was like, mm-mm. And I know everybody's like, oh, they had such chemistry. Even to the very end, and I watched season 10, I didn't see it. I know this is crazy to say now that it's all over. And even though it would have made a different impact, I feel that, believe it or not, Kristen Stewart should have played Lois Lane and ended the show with her being with Clark, because the chemistry that these two had, it was so much so that they've tried to find different ways to keep her on the show. Seriously. Like it's a fact. It was too much. And I probably would have appreciated her more as Lois Lane, because to me, she personified the look of Lois Lane more than Erica Durance, even though she changed her hair color to a much darker color, I believe, in season 9. But even when she came in, it's not that I don't find her to be a bad actress. I just never liked the character of Lois Lane to begin with, and just for different reasons. So when she comes in and she's having all this, brotherly, sisterly kind of relationship with, Clark, and then she's falling in love with Green Arrow. And, I never really pegged her to be Lois Lane. And I know that there's supposed to be this grand love. And even when they started to fall in love, I'm like, it was forced. I was like, yeah, I think that's why I also didn't want to see the rest of it. I was like, oh, this is going to be the Lois Lane that he's going to end up with. And poor, Kristen Curran, who plays Lana Lang, is like out there, and you could just see the difference between the chemistry on the two actors. It's just, it's palpable, you know. Um, but she doesn't play a bad Lois Lane. I just don't like the character. So I've been listening to the podcast that Michael Rosenbaum, who played Lex Luthor, and now with Tom Welling, who is Superman. They have a podcast called Talkville, where they go and they discuss each episode, each season, and there's some interesting insights there. I know one thing, they're really working it. Like they have another one that's called Cruiseville, where they're taking everybody on a cruise and they can meet the cast and stuff like that. They got merch. Like, I'm like, wow, you guys, I see that Tom Welling now, because I didn't know at the time that he didn't have much appreciation playing the role of Superman. I think he has a much better appreciation now because he has kids and his kids think of him as Superman. Part of the reason why he didn't wear the suit at the end of the series is because he had this reason in his mind that no flights, no tights. He didn't do the fan service, anything. We waited 10 years and he never even put on the suit and flew, and that was very disturbing. I think that, not that I don't think he regrets it now, but I think that he is more open to it now. He's beginning to understand the importance of his role on the show, where he goes into detail with Michael Rosenbaum on how difficult it was on many of the scenes and the sets and how miserable they were. And, as much as I like to listen to the podcast, it kind of like takes the magic away from the show, because then I'm listening to, all the stuff that they're saying, and I'm looking at the series and I'm looking at the episode they're talking about. And, sometimes they get really, really upset about how things turned. And I kind of just don't want to hear that. I'm like, as a fan, I just want to stay in the fan dome. I understand that they went through a hell of a time on set. They were not treated very well. I'm glad that they're openly discussing it and it changes for other people, because no one should be mistreated. But I also feel like they didn't really take into consideration the impact that they had on the fans, for me. So it's like I have a cross to bear. Like sometimes I listen to some of the seasons they're talking about in episodes, but then sometimes when they start getting into their negative space, I'm like, I don't want to, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I thought about the Cruiseville and then I saw the price. I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna, no, no way. No, I'm not paying that. Like we got my life is hard enough. I don't have money to be shelling out to these people when they're on reruns and they have, I don't know what kind of money they're making, but they're making more money than I am. That's for sure. You know, and do all due respect. It's way too much for me. And somebody else may appreciate it, but not me. So I'm sitting here, you know, and I feel like they're really working it, that they want to come back. And I'm thinking about this descent of DCU with not just James Gunn. It's been for a long time. It's going back to the days where they've had the rights to Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman for years now, and they've never even made a dent. It's always Batman, 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 and then they rushed into trying to follow up with Marvel and they screwed the pooch there. And then they're trying to reset it with James Gunn and he's like really not helping the situation at all, and I would really like to see if this ever came to play, because I don't know where the DCU is going. They can keep James Gunn. I don't know what they're. I honestly, I don't know. I stopped hoping, which is sad because Superman is about hope, right? So I started thinking when I'm watching Tom Welling and I'm Michael Rosenbaum, I would love for them to reboot it where Tom Welling is either Jor-El, which is Superman's father, or Pa Kent. He could really play both. I'm leaning towards Jor-El because that would give him the opportunity to wear the suit. And I could see him guiding the new Superman. And I would like to see a broader scope of Jor-El and, before the whole downfall of Krypton. And I think that he would really appreciate that role, and I think he'll do it justice. But then I look at Pa Kent, who, by the way, in Smallville, the Kent family, Annette O'Toole and Jonathan, John Snyder, they're the epitome of who I would want as a Manapa. They are above who I thought originally I wanted as a Manapa, which was the Little House on the Prairie. Okay, Manapa. Okay, they take the cake. When I think about hometown, small town, family, those two, when I watched them, it's just that's how what I envision family to be, which is why I was so upset with James Gunn. He played Ma and Pa like two big bumbling idiots in his movie. I'm like, they're not idiots. They're not bumbling. They're very highly intelligent, loving people. And what he did with Jor-El and his changing the lore, I'm like, I don't want to get into that. But, watching Smallville and looking at them like that, it's like, wow, that really gave us a lot of hope, especially after 9/11, because it aired a month later. And I can see definitely him playing Paquette because he really resonates with him now. He's appreciating John Snyder for the work that he did in Smallville. So if I were to have an option, I would like it to be reset. Definitely Tom Welling to play a significant role. I'm leaning towards Jor-El, and definitely Michael Rosenbaum playing Lionel Luthor, which would be Lex Luthor's dad. I think they're both aged into the reality of appreciation for what they contributed to not just the lore, not just the television, but they got to remember, and I think they're understanding that now. Kids look up to this. Kids want to be Superman, want to be Batman, want to be Wonder Woman. They look at this, they don't look at the actors behind it. They look at what's being said, to them, and the original premise of, Superman giving hope with the S on his chest says a lot, and there are kids that grow up watching this and they really love watching what they're putting out there. And I really believe that if given the chance that, Lex Luthor, Michael Rosenbaum, and, Tom Welling, they can continue doing the hope and the brightness that's missing in the DCU right now. I think that the fact that part of the problem with the Smallville and just going in general after they finish Smallville and they do the Arrowverse, which was Flash, Arrow, and I want to say Supergirl, um, the WB TV and WB movie, even though it's under the same, IP, under the same Warner Brothers, was considered to be separate in the company, which is why they never allowed an iteration of Batman and in any of the TV shows. And I think that they never had a visionary. They didn't want to put Batman on television because they were working on the Christian Bale Batman, because they didn't want to confuse. And I don't think they understood the audience. The audience can understand the difference between the Batman of Christian Bale, the movie, theatrical, versus putting him in the actual, Smallville cast or in the Arrowverse or just in general. He's a huge part of the lore. And I just feel like they just never had someone that had a vision of where they can take this, how far they can go. I think that it would have done a complete turnaround of the show, especially after Lex Luthor. They should have never let him go, by the way. It would have changed the movement of the WB, the way that people were watching this, because everybody knew Green Arrow was supposed to be Batman, okay, as much as we love him. But they have the show Gotham, which is the young version of Batman, him growing up, but mostly is focused on the police officer. And again, they have all the characters there already, and Batman is not even Batman yet. I'm like, what? It's like they've never had someone to come in and be like, let's combine everything. Let's give a lore where it belongs to on the TV, extended. The movies can be separate. We already know about the multiverse or whatever the hell you want to talk about it. But they sat on this IP for so long and did nothing with it that by the time that people started getting into the WB and all the other nonsense that was happening, so many things were changing. And now that I look at Smallville and I think about all of the stuff that they touched upon, and I look at the Batman movies and I think about what James Gunn is attempting to do, my greatest hope is that someone does come in and reset this. Bring in the people that come in and really make an impact. Imagine a movie with Tom Welling as Jor-El, Michael Rosenbaum as Lionel Luthor, and having a new cast of the younger version of Superman. And I think that it could ease some fan service. I know a lot of fans would love to see that. I would. hmm Tom Welling is hot. Don't make a mistake. That man at the last scene as Superman, I was like, oh my god. He has the bone structure, the face, the persona. I'm like, wow. I wish that he would have appreciated his role and he would have enjoyed his time more. But you can't turn back time. I think they're both really, really, really stretching it and really trying to get back in to the fold by having Talkville, Cruiseville, merch, all this stuff. I'm like, yo, I'm sure if you ask them at the right time and the right place, they will come back in some way, shape, or form. Bring in Batman, bring in Wonder Woman. Enough with the madness. I don't want Clayface. I don't want any of that. Like, let's just get the proper DCU. Give me a real Justice League. Give me a real Watchtower. Bring in Arrow. He's important. Flash, he needs to be recast. Like, what are we waiting for? Who are all these other people that we need to dig into? There's no lore in Supergirl. Nobody cares. I doubt somebody even cares about Clayface. He's a great villain, but he doesn't need his own movie. You can put him on streaming, but you shouldn't have his own movie. I just came in just to say that because I am working on a video. I'm going the titles now that I've seen all of the 10 seasons. I'm going through the titles to just make myself remember which was one of my favorites. Season 1 is pretty easy. The next seasons, I pretty much gauge which are my favorite episodes, and hopefully in a couple of weeks I can bring it to you. I hope that you guys, whether you watch this or understand this or you're a true fan like I am, I hope that you appreciate this and, take a look at the Smallville. And if you want, take a look at Talkville with Michael Rosenbaum and let me know your thoughts about, how him and Tom Welling are talking about each episode. And if you feel the same way, like sometimes they just TMI and just give us some fan, background. I appreciate their pain and suffering, but sometimes when you go through it episode by episode and they keep talking about this, not they don't do it episode by, I haven't watched the entire Talkville. I mean, they're going 10 seasons episode by episode. My God, you know, um, and also Michael Rosenbaum has a podcast Inside of You where he talks to many different actors. And there's definitely a pain factor there. He does have some background pain, which is interesting to listen to. But when you watch the TV show, it's just to think about all that and how phenomenal they did, and the acting, considering all the pain and suffering they were going through. I give them that props. So Saturday, I'm a little alone, not lonely, but I'm a little alone and it's quiet in my house. That's why I'm filming in my boudoir. Just checking in everyone, see how you doing. How you doing? What you doing this weekend? Let me know. Hopefully tonight I can record my clips for Sex in the City so I can record during the week and bring it to you as soon as I can. Hopefully HBO will not be a bitch and, do what they did to me the last time so I can really get back on the ground running. I'm a little tired, and I don't know why. I feel a little I think I'm melancholy. Let me know if anybody else feels that way sometimes. But other than that, just checking in. Hello, is it me you're looking for? I can see it in your eyes. So, my name is Lena. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you consider coming back, subscribing, hyping, liking, and you like this rawness. It's all me, baby. That's all I got. So I want to wish everybody a wonderful rest of your weekend. I'm not going to be putting in clips. This is going to be a video that is just going to go straight as much as I can. I don't want to deal with the gussing up and the fancy lighting, and which I don't have any because it's in the basement. I just wanted to come here simple and just say, thank you. Goodbye.